Hey, I'm Steph. I'm a motivator, creator, small business owner, and educator. I'm a lover of all things health, spirituality, inspiration, and business. These are just a few words to describe me, along with passion, grit, and resiliency. Regardless of what I'm up to, I am soul-driven to create a purpose-filled life and find the advantages in adversity, all while keeping a smile on my face.
Soul Driven with Steph is a podcast that will fill up your cup and leave you feeling empowered, inspired, and on fire as you listen to interviews and stories of other soul-driven and strong women that have overcome against all odds. This podcast was a calling on Steph's soul to serve, connect, and share stories of struggles and successes, all to create a community so that you know you're never alone. Grab a cup of coffee, get ready to learn, laugh, and leave with wisdom and strategies to connect to your soul and get back in the driver's seat of your life today. Here's Steph.
Writing a book is something that you always said you would do, but why now? And what made you start writing and then decide to birth a book alongside birthing the baby?
So I started writing a little over 2 years ago, and it was literally right after I had decided to step away from my brick and mortar here in this building. And I was really looking for just like an outlet because I felt like I was in just this rock bottom moment. And I picked up a workbook and I had to start writing my story. And it took you through the highs and the lows of your, what they call universal story. And I just started writing to write. I wanted no deadlines, no expectations. I have a really hard time doing something without making a business of it or creating something for a reason, for an outcome. So I really wanted to challenge myself to just write, to write. So I just kept writing, and I would go months where I would write a lot, and then I'd go months where I didn't write at all. And last year, then, once I got pregnant, there were many nights, or I should say mornings, where I was up at 2, 3 a.m. and I could not sleep. So I would just go upstairs. You would wake up sometimes and be like, what are you doing? I'd go upstairs and I would just write. And I kept writing because I realized it was actually therapeutic. It was like healing a lot of this trauma that I had endured. And there were days where I would just write and cry, but then I'd be able to move forward from that chapter that I wrote. So I really started to feel the push at the end of last year, right before I went on maternity leave, that I needed to publish the book this year. And it made zero sense because, like, I was about to have a baby. I remember telling my sister I would write on maternity leave, and she laughed at me, and now I'm laughing at myself, thinking that was even a possibility. But, as most of you know, that was 2 weeks overdue. So I was just waiting every day, which gave me the time to practically finish the book, and up until the last chapter. So I felt the push to publish this year because when I was writing these chapters, I was writing from a place of just like raw emotion and authenticity, and that's really what I wanted the book to reflect as you read it. Maybe you cried a little bit, maybe you smiled, maybe you laughed, and I felt like if I waited until after I had a baby to write the book or to publish the book, that those emotions wouldn't really feel as authentic. They wouldn't come through because I would have been in such a different chapter in my life. Being a mom, going through birth, and just the transformation that comes with that. So that was the push to do it and really just close that chapter of that decade of my life and then move into the one I'm in now with like feeling healed and feeling like I can read this book now and be a little bit more removed from those hard experiences. So that's the long answer.
Good. So Stephanie, most of your audience has probably had a chance to tear open the book. Some people might still be reading it a bit, but for the most part, I think people have probably read a good chunk of it. What do you want your readers to take away from the book? Regardless of their age, what stage of life they're in or their business in. What is the takeaway that you want everybody to have?
I want you to have this book on your bookshelf as something you come back to for that season that you find yourself in. You can read it from really any stage or season of life or business, and half of you here are not business owners, and half of you are, and I think you found that you got to, no matter what season you're in, and knowing that you can learn from every single stage and season of life and business.
So there are lots of lessons in your book. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a great pivot point. And you mentioned tons of lessons, right, and how they ended up impacting you. To you, which stands out the most as the biggest?
That's not your question. So I'm not prepared to answer that question. But it's a great question. There's so many lessons. I think the biggest one was even when I felt like I was failing or that I didn't know the way forward, I still did. And I just kept coming back to myself because it's so easy to get wrapped up in the world and what we should be doing and what this person said, what that person did for success. But ultimately, I think we already know what we're supposed to do inside, but it's usually the opposite of what we really want to do, or it's a hard decision that we have to make. It's not the easy one. So we want to be like, next, other path, other option, please. But really, it is those hard decisions that I made and those turning point moments that ultimately kept me moving forward, even when the path was invisible. It was non-existent. Maybe I was off on a completely different, path that I had no idea where it was going. But even when I didn't know, I did. It was just trusting myself.
Awesome. In chapter 7, this is one thing I was thinking about. You talk about the importance of staying true to your values, right? Just as you stay true to your journey, your mission, and you've been resilient, as you talk about there. Why does staying true to your values matter in business?
Because you're going to be tested over and over and over again. And sometimes it's going to come out left field and you're not going to see it coming. You're not going to be prepared for it and you're going to wonder what to do. But when you're true to yourself, and that's really what entrepreneurship is, it's staying true to yourself, trusting yourself and your higher purpose. But when you come back to what you know to be true and those values that you uphold, and for example, I know in the book I talk about integrity is a huge one for me. And just being consistent with what I say that I'm going to do, I actually do. And so when something tries to, veer you in a different direction, you got to come back to, again, what is it that means the most to me in this situation? And again, it's a lot of hard decisions and the hard conversations that you have to stay true to yourself and your values. Even when, especially when everyone else is doing the opposite, or everyone else is doing the other thing, it doesn't matter what is true to you. Sometimes you're standing alone, but oftentimes there is people that will find you, and that's all of you in this room. You are the tribe of people that will continue to show up over and over, even when I had an idea and I didn't really know what it would look like, to have people just come along for the journey and trust you and believe in you. the book. And of course, the book launched in the spring when we're all planting seeds. And then as far as the title of the book, I knew it had to have the word soul in it. Because like soul is in everything that I do, and I always bring my soul, or what I say, my soul purpose to everything. So I knew it needed soul, and then it became really clear that the seasons were a huge part of it, and became the four parts of the book. So I did a little, chat GPT of like giving some titles, played with the words, obviously surrendered it, prayed on it, and then that was kind of how the seasons of Soulpreneur came to be. And again, it's for the entrepreneur, but it's really for anyone that feels like they have soul purpose to carry out.
Awesome. So, weather and storms, right? Huge part of that. We talked about that seasonality. Seems like that's pretty inevitable in business, right? To have those storms, those challenges we face. Each season brings its own challenges. So, how do we in general in life and business continue to find joy even in those dark storms?
Yeah, I think that's what the book is all about, is like embracing whatever season you're in, which is so much easier said than when you're in it. You just want to give up. I think it's really finding those people that keep you going. That was a huge part of why I still showed up to teach classes every day, because I had these amazing women who loved my classes and smiled, and like they showed up for me, so I showed up for them. So if you can have that like community piece of it, that's huge. And then same with even like Sister Circle, we're all in hard seasons, but we can still show up and have these people support us. So whether that was like the studio business or the Sister Circle, I think I just really love cultivating community for those hard seasons, because we all go through them. Whether it's business, personal, career, motherhood, finding those communities of support for everything is really going to push you through it. And then just continuing to go back to your why. Why are you doing it? It sounds so simple, but I have, a bulletin board where I wrote my why. I have things in my office every day that remind me of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I just think it's allowing yourself that space to step back from the hard seasons and the stress. And something I would always tell myself was, this is going to make a really good story someday. And it did. Like, I think some of the best chapters in the book are probably when I was going through really hard seasons and share that from a place of authenticity and vulnerability. And knowing that you're not alone, and by you sharing your hard seasons, you are creating a safe space for other people to do the same.
And it makes you more relatable, right?
Absolutely. I think that is truly one of the best gifts that my hard seasons gave me, is that anytime I'm like sitting on stage or speaking from, experience, it's because I have literally gone through it. I've been in those seasons. I remember the days when I had literally pennies in my bank account. Like, I dropped off a check, it went through, and I was left with pennies. Okay, now what am I going to go to? How am I going to make this money back? Like, I have been there and been through it and made my way through it and forward and came out even better on the other side. So it is possible, but I think oftentimes all we see is someone's like huge success story. Here's an XYZ that I did to find success. I did all of these things, and we know that there are challenges and struggles along the way, but most people aren't willing to share them. So I think just being able to use those seasons of struggle as stories for hope and growth and relatability.
Sure. So I'm going to put you on the spot here for a second, Steph. So, you don't talk a ton about your career in real estate in the book, but I really think that there are a lot of parallels in a sales career, which I would say real estate is, right? And a lot of the lessons that you teach in business. On page 176, you mentioned that before getting into real estate, you would have described it as not creative, contracts and legal lingo, how boring, and whoa. How would you describe it today?
This is really funny. I didn't write about this in the book, but I actually cried when I made the decision to go into real estate. Like, I was crying out of sadness because I thought my dream was dead of my studio that I was pursuing. I thought it never ends. There's no end. Like, I think that's the hardest part. We always think that, like, if I get to XYZ, then this will be easy. But it doesn't get easier. We get smarter and wiser, and our challenges feel maybe less scary and hard to manage, but it literally never ends. And I actually like this, I don't love this parallel, but it is what it is, comparing it to like fitness and wellness. It never ends. Like, you are literally going to have to work out till you die if you want to stay healthy. And that can get really monotonous and boring and hard to stay consistent. And business is the same way. I mean, unless you have a plan where you're going to retire and you're going to be done by this time, which I don't know many entrepreneurs who have a plan for retirement other than to continue to build new businesses. That it's just, you're always going to be in different seasons. So even now, I feel like I've been, I've been in that kind of harvest season, but now I'm going into a planting season. And I'm also hitting new storms, like, because I have multiple businesses, those are all kind of in different seasons. So I think that is the point of the book, is to just like embrace whatever season you're in, because it's never going to get easier. You just continue to show up as a better version of yourself.
So you bring up the importance of just knowing that like it's going to be infinite, essentially. The challenge that come with business, and you just accept that and ride that wave and try to find joy in it, right? And you use an interesting analogy of fitness, which kind of brings me to the next question, right? You also talk about in your book, how things like running and MMA help you build resilience. How do those help you build resilience, and then what does that translate into as far as your business challenges along your journey?
Well, I never thought that MMA would be kind of how I built my mindset for resilience initially for the challenges that I was going to endure. But I would say just knowing that you can challenge yourself physically. This is why I think some of the most successful entrepreneurs work out every day or to some degree, because if you can hit that hard workout in the gym and tackle that, you can go do anything in your business. I mean, you can do one hard thing, then you can do all the hard things. So I really learned the importance of mindset in MMA, because if you even walked into that cage doubting yourself, you've already lost. Like, that's going to creep in to your fight. You know that better than anyone, right? Like, you have to go in with a winning mindset and attitude, and I think business is the same thing. You have to always look for the positive and the possibility, because you can find the negative and the fear and the doubt every single day. And those are right too. You look around, everything, like, can scare you into not wanting to do anything, to feel paralyzed. But when you can look for the wins and all the work that you put in when you come to the actual fight or the run or whatever, is the preparation work. So that when you have that big thing happen in your business, whether you're speaking on a stage or maybe you're a podcast interview or a news interview or whatever it is, everything else you did is the preparation, and then you just step into that opportunity and you're ready for it. You show up as your best self. And I think MMA was just a really intense opportunity for me to experience that, and also experience losses and putting yourself out there to fail or be humiliated on a public platform. When you open a business, like, you're opening the door for anyone to have an opinion about you, right? So how are we going to navigate that and be able to just still believe in what we're doing, even when there are negative comments or reviews or someone coming at you, knowing that that's part of it, that's part of putting yourself out there.
Sure. So, you end the book, kind of the ending of the book, talks about the birth of Val, right? That certainly presented its own challenges, right? I mean, I'm curious, you see any parallels between all the lessons you talk about in your book and then becoming a mother?
Yes, surrender. Nothing, because it's really in your control. I would say yes, absolutely. And it's funny because, like, birthing a business, birthing a book, birthing a baby, all has parallels. And I think the biggest one is you actually have no control. but yourself. Like, all you can control is yourself and how you show up and how you respond to anything. There are always going to be factors outside of your control. So focus on what you can, show up as your best self, and surrender the rest. And I mean, even birth alone is a huge surrender process. As I talk about surrendering some more, and really just allowing yourself to trust in whatever your power is, that you are always being guided to whatever action or decision you need to make in your business.
Thank you. So, trust, right? A big theme in your book is soul work and trusting your intuition. How can we learn to tune in and trust ourselves even when the path ahead is unclear?
Really finding the signs, like how does your intuition speak to you? Feathers is a big one for me. I see feathers on my walks a lot, and I'm like just trying to get out of my head and figure it all out, and needing to surrender. In the book, I talk a lot about the lights, and some of you were there who would see those things, and it became very obvious and evident that the lights filtering was always a sign that I was like, next chapter, next thing. So knowing what your signs are, like not seeing everything as maybe logical, as maybe it is more, or what's the word I want to say? Nothing's a coincidence, is what I'm trying to say. Nothing is a coincidence. So if you see something and it means something to you, then it does. So use that as a sign to trust yourself, guide yourself, and continue to come back to yourself. And that means giving yourself that space to continue to connect back to your soul, whatever that looks like. I was fortunate that I was in the yoga industry where that wasn't a weird thing to do. It was pretty normal to meditate and do yoga and be this like kind of spirit junkie that I am. So I'm really grateful that I can just be that and be myself. But I know sometimes that can be a little rude and weird to other people. I know even when we first met, you didn't really understand all of my spiritual practices. And now you do, and you get it, and you engage in those things with me just for fun. So I think being open-minded to the fact that I don't think any of us are here to just go through the motions and die. I think that we have a purpose, and it's up to us to live out that purpose.
So I don't think, and you're kind of reflecting here when you talk about that, I don't think that that's exclusive to yoga, like looking for the signs and things and kind of having illogical ways of looking at things, right? Like, I'm in sales and a big part of my job is cold calling, which can get pretty monotonous and repetitive, right? I look at it as how many no's I have to get through to appease the sales gods before they'll finally grant me a yes, And when you look at it, right, when you reframe that a little bit, I think that can help you see some of those challenges as more like stepping stones, right? Like, this is just a rep I gotta put in, which will take me to that place where I'm trying to get.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. You never shared that metaphor with me, to appease the sales gods. And it's funny because it's like, if we knew that we had to go through 20 no's to get that yes, we would fly through those 20 no's, right? Like, let's just get them over with. So I think we have to look at that in our life too, of like, how many no's do I need to go through until I hit the right opportunity or the right yes? We never really know, but that's why we just have to keep going.
So the last question, one of the last, what did you enjoy most about the writing process, and can we expect another book from you in the future?
I surprisingly loved writing, and I think I've always enjoyed writing. You guys know, like everyone says, my posts and what I write in cards and everything is so long, I should just write a book. Well, I did. I think I love the writing process. I love working with my writing coach. She helps me bring my ideas onto paper and make it make sense. The actual parts of it that I thought I would love more were the things that were outside my
curious to know, did you ever find a battle with your ego during this process of standing in your own way, or your ego telling you what makes you think you could write the book? What makes you think you could do any of these hard things? Your journey has been absolutely beautiful, but I think about the ups and downs, the hills and the valleys that must have transpired throughout this process. And I journal, and I also think that I would like to publish these journals that I have. And my ego is definitely like, who the hell would want to be 100%? Yeah. Did you ever feel that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And even when I was going through the shifts from stepping away from the studio into real estate, totally felt like a loser, failure, rock bottom. Who am I to coach a business owners? Like, right? My first business at that point felt like a failure. So to even go through that and then step into a new career that I knew nothing, imposter syndrome, like to the max, right? But we just keep showing up every day, just continuing to learn, continuing to grow, and 100% felt that with the book too. I mean, I knew that I was supposed to write the book, but it's actually when the book started launching that I started feeling the fears. Once it was actually out there, because it was like a vulnerability, like now it's out there, I can't even retract it. Like, who am I to hit bestseller or to be able to speak to these things? To publish a book, absolutely, and that still shows up every single day. But I do think it's, again, just knowing that God called me to write this book for a reason, and I am not showing up for my sole purpose if I don't follow that calling. So it's kind of like letting go of my ego, getting out of my own way, because I had put this assignment was not put on me by just myself. Like, there's a higher purpose. So I think a lot of times when we feel called to do something big and scary, we question ourselves and who am I to do this? But you're called to it for a reason. You wouldn't feel that nudge to write a book or publish your journals if you weren't prepared to do that. So it really is just like letting go of our own ego, letting it die a little bit, and just continuing to follow that intuition and inner guide. Good question. Yeah.
I think that might be a perfect segue, because I think we're always co-creating, and you're answering your calling within you and God. And so my question to you is that when I write, I don't know when the inspiration is going to hit, so I can't be like, from 9 to 10 today, I'm going to write my book. And oftentimes I look back at my writings, and I don't remember totally writing them. Did that happen to you throughout the process of being one with your higher power and connecting to source, to co-creating and write this most amazing thing?
Yeah, totally. I did not ever put writing a book on my schedule. It was never on my schedule. It was only when it felt like divine. Like I said, I think I was getting downloads at like 2 or 3 a.m. That's why it kept hitting me then. And so that's when I would write. And so I wrote purely for inspiration. And that's why I said I didn't put a deadline or a script. It needs to be done by then. Because I didn't want it to feel forced. So I think we just keep writing. We just keep writing when we feel inspired. And you'll know when it's like time to work towards publishing, because I think you're going to feel that intuitive hit like I did, where it's like, okay, now you need to start working towards publishing. You're going to just feel it. You're super in tune, and you just got to trust yourself when it's ready. And there were times where I was like, I started nitpicking it, right? So we can't get to that point where it's like we're nitpicking every little piece because we're afraid of getting published, right? And I felt that too. Anyone that's written a book has felt that, right? Where you're like, I just need done because I'm not ruining it if Yeah, like if I would have known the challenges that I was going to face when I started on the journey, I would have never started right. It would have been way too scary. So like being young, dumb, and naive really scared me. But also, we're never too old to make those big pivots and decisions. And what I like to do, even when I make the one more recently, even making pivots now, is constantly remind myself that I've already overcome. I've changed my identity. I've changed my career path. I have completely transformed my life before. I can do it again. And so I think just drawing on those past experiences that you've already overcome for the strength that you need to pivot again. And knowing that we're in this constant evolution always. If we weren't evolving, then we're staying exactly where we are, not growing. So embracing the evolution, getting excited about it, knowing that there's going to be equal amounts of fear as there is excitement, and it's essentially the same emotion. We just need to tap into the exciting part and not let the fear hold us back from actually making that decision. I'm just and I think there is some value to making those decisions as you get older. You say, yes, you maybe feel like we have more to lose, but also we don't care as much about what other people think of us as we get older, right? Like, who cares? When you're 20, you care a lot more about what other people think of you, and you don't have the wisdom to hold some of those big emotions as you do as you get older. So I think there's really pros and cons to both. You know, I think there's pros to being young and dumb and broke, because you're already broke, so who cares? You're going to learn a lot of lessons, and it's going to be great. And when you're older, you already have wisdom, and you can care less about what other people think, and you can draw on experiences in the past as your guide that have already overcome hard things. I told Ben this week that when I am doing anything hard, now I look back on the things that I've overcome. Oh my gosh, I completely, pivoted my business and reinvented myself. I fought in an MMA cage and lost and also won. I gave birth after 48 hours of labor. We draw on these hard experiences to be like, yeah, this is easy. I've already done hard things. And something I've been telling myself lately is we can do hard things and have fun. Right? We can do burpees and have fun. We can overcome business challenges and have fun. Yes, we can. Great question. Any others?
As someone who's experienced these seasons with you, first off, super proud. Second of all, if you have a conversation with yourself when you're in that planting, accepting the season, what makes you tell yourself now to make their experience easier than it might?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, thank you for everything you have done for me and just always being there. I would say if you are planting to, just like I said, have fun. Don't get so caught up in how it needs to look and everything being perfect, and just have fun. Embrace your humble beginnings, because someday you're going to look back on them as like that saying goes, you don't realize you're in the old days until you're out of them. Like I look back fondly on all the amazing experiences that I had, even being 20. Like I look back on them, and I was having so much fun, and I need to remember that. Okay, it wasn't always hard, and it wasn't always struggle. There was still joy every season, and it's always going to turn out better than you know. That's what I would tell my younger version of myself, or that person who's just starting. The vision you have right now, hold that vision, because it will motivate you to chase it, but it's probably going to look very different, and it's going to be better than you could have ever imagined. Great question.
So I love the season's theme, and a lot of times I find myself in more than one season at a time.
seeds. I'm a brand new mom. I know nothing, and I know a couple of things now, but not a lot, right? So I'm in a new season there, and then, but also in business, I'm sometimes in storms, and sometimes I'm in harvest, and sometimes I'm in growing. And so I think just pulling the lessons from those seasons and knowing that we can hold grief and sadness and disappointment alongside joy, gratitude, and happiness. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. We don't have to live in the extremes. I think the world tries to tell you that you have to live in the extremes, and you don't. Life and business and everything, motherhood, I'm finding is so much gray. I don't have to be this or that. I can actually find my way right here in the middle, whatever that looks like for me. So I would just say, hold yourself with grace, that no matter what season you're in, you're going to experience all of these emotions. You can be in the harvest season and still have grief and sadness and bittersweetness. So there is no end goal. It's always going to keep repeating. There's a cycle or pattern bouncing around from season to season. So just know how to support yourself. What does that look like when you are feeling those maybe heavy emotions? How do you support yourself? And when you're in emotions of joy and gratitude, share with people around you. You know, be that light for other people, whichever you are, and just continue to show up regardless of feeling those contradictory emotions. Know that. I think that's human experience. Unfortunately or fortunately, however we want to look at it, that we can hold both at the same time. Any other questions? Well, I hope this was just an inspiring afternoon. I appreciate every single one of you for being here. So if I haven't gotten to hug you yet and or get a picture with you, I'd love to do so. And hopefully this is the planting season for me to continue to share this book and share this message. So share with other people around you. And I just appreciate all of you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Soul Driven with Steph. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it out with someone else who needs to hear this message. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that you know when new episodes drop. And until next time, be sure to take care of your mind, your body, and your soul.